One of the things that we are all doing right now is planning for the spring while we're in the winter. And I thought it'd be really cool to kind of take you around the garden and share with you what we have planned coming up in the spring. And we're going to change things up just a little bit, but we're also going to keep with a little bit of tradition. So stay tuned. We'll share that with you right now. So we're here in Southern California, pretty close to the LA area, and it's very mild here in the winter, but it does get a little bit colder and our gardens do slow down. What some people see as immense growth, obviously I have a lot of blooming going on in the garden. It does slow down quite a bit. It's not quite like the spring, and it's definitely not like the summertime. So even though we have this slowing of some of our plants in the garden, we do still have growth, and that includes our weeds. So in the wintertime, we still have a lot of abundance of weeds during this time of year. And I have been super busy over the past month because, as I've said before, I'm a music teacher and we have a lot of different concerts and programs that we're doing along with my own family and their activities that we have going on. So I haven't really had a lot of time to get out in the garden, but I thought it would be really an honest look at what our garden looks like when we don't have time to take care of it like we normally do in the spring and in the summer, and just kind of give you a glimpse of what it looks like now and what we have planned in the spring. So we're going to start with this part of the yard, and I wanted to start here because I have two different things happening at the same time. I have these beautiful super bells that are still blooming all through the fall and now into the winter, and they have just done an amazing job this year, and they look great, and they're looking like they're going to flesh out even more blooms here in the near future. So you have that going on, and then you also have the absolute calming of growth in our garden, where we don't really have too many things happening because, you know, it's getting colder. Like I said, our tomato is flopped over completely. It's still pretty green, but it's not putting on fruit like it had been before. So this is all going to get cleared out. So this part of the yard is going to be a really nice showcase here in the near future for our tulips, which is always a tradition with us every year. We plant tulips every single winter, and we have to force the bulbs to bloom because we don't have the climate here for that kind of bulb to grow naturally. So we order them from Color Blends. I've said this before in other videos. They will, for a flat fee, refrigerate them, which is what they need in order to push their blooms. So we have those. We actually just had those delivered yesterday. And so we're going to fill our raised beds with this beautiful combination of color. There's 8 different varieties. I think it's called the Big Ups variety. And we're going to fill this whole area, including the raised bed that we have here in the back that we built last year. And I think it's going to be a beautiful showcase right before we get ready to plant our spring crops, which we're really excited for. I think what we're going to do after the tulips are done, because they'll be done pretty much in March, or the early part of March, because we're so mild here, and when it starts to warm up, they're going to start growing immediately, a lot sooner than a lot of the other parts of our country would have. If you're in an area where it does get cold enough for tulips, then your tulips are going to be much later in the season. Ours happen to be earlier because we're warmer earlier. But right after they're done, Ben and I have plans to fill these raised beds with onions and potatoes, and then also with all kinds of lettuce. And we have some lettuce growing here that we started from seed. This is our winter lettuce, and it looks absolutely beautiful. I have a real problem with lettuce because I love to grow it, we love to use it, but it looks so beautiful. I almost hate to cut it off and use it because it looks so amazing, especially in a yard where not a lot's going on. But look at that, it looks so pretty. It's almost like little rosettes of color, that chartreuse from the romaine there. And then we have all different kinds of fancy lettuce, which is a red leaf. We have a fancy variety, and then of course the classic romaine. And I love how they look like rosettes. It's so pretty. But anyways, so we'll have the tulips. We'll probably plant the front of the flower beds with some new seed plantings of the lettuce there. So you're going to have that different contrasting color. And we ordered 1,200 tulips this year. And so we're going to plant those back here in our raised beds and of course in the front planter, which we do every single year. I think I have some footage I'll show you of the front planter. It looks absolutely beautiful when it's totally full of tulips, and there's nothing that says spring like those kind of blooms every year. So that's what we're going to do here. This whole bed back here is a big hot mess right now. I haven't done anything. Obviously, you can tell our roses have grown way tall, probably about 8 feet tall with this variety right here in the middle. And we have dandelions growing. We have Bidens that are still blooming miraculously. I can't believe that, but it is full of weeds. So I'm going to have to rework this area, especially on the ground. So in a couple weeks here, I'm going to trim back the roses. They respond really well to a good trim back in mid-January, even late January. And so after I trim the roses back, I'm going to clear out the bottom portion of the flower bed, clear out the Bidens and all the weeds. And then I'm going to replant some gladiolas that I had in between the roses because they had really become impacted and they were pushing each other up, and they are very shallow in the ground, and they need to be planted a little bit deeper. This way they don't flop in the spring when they have those beautiful heavy plumes that are just so stunning to look at when they grow all together. So I'm going to do that, replant those, give them a little bit more space, trim back the boxwoods here, and then plant in some really beautiful, vibrant color. I think I'm going to go back to what I originally had planted the first season when I created this bed, was some supertunias. I think I'm going to do reds this year. So I'm going to do a deep red color along with a purple to give it a really neat, like contrasting color. So I haven't decided which purple I'm going to use. Bordeaux, which is a Proven Winners variety, is absolutely beautiful. It's more of a lavender with a deep purple throat, but I think I'm going to go for something a little bit darker in purple. So I think the Supertunia red variety that I'm going to use, there's a couple to choose from, but I think I'm going to use the black cherry variety because I've had that before in the ground and it did really well. And I think it's going to really be a nice, like, contrasting color back here because I have the pink from the roses here. I have burgundy also here. That'll also be second in the ground there. And this Benjamin Britton rose is kind of like a fuchsia colored. And so I think all of these will work really well together if I have that purple and the red in there. So we'll see how that looks because that's going to be exciting to see what that turns out to be. And it's always really neat to kind of take something like this, which is clearly overgrown, clear it out, start over from scratch and see how it does. It's always very satisfying to see that. So I'm looking forward to that for sure. All right, so we have our cherry tomatoes, which are still growing, but we're not warm enough for them to really put on any fruit. So they look really green and vibrant, but they're just kind of like not really producing. So these are all going to come out, and the top bed that's back here will be filled with tulips. I think the bottom bed either will be tulips as well. I don't know if we're going to put lettuce here like we are going to on the other side, but if we do decide not to do that, then we'll fill both of them with tulips, and I think it'll be really pretty. So that's going to be fun to see how that works. All right, so let's take a look over here back towards the house and talk about our plans for back here. So we have some we have some daffodils that are planted in here that'll be coming up shortly, and we have a couple cauliflower plants that we started from seed that hopefully will fill out and produce in January or perhaps even early February. Once those are all cleared out, then we're going to use this area again for our garden, and something will be productive in here for sure. We'll trim back the roses in January. Watch the boxwoods. They're still doing very well from my trim back. I've also trimmed back my verbena down here, and they're also starting to sprout out again. So I don't know, Ben, if you can come in here and see the verbena that I cut back. This is the Stormburst verbena that I cut all the way back to the base, and it's starting to sprout out. So who knows, I might not even have to purchase anything to plant in here, because if these are a perennial for us, that would be a definite win. I would love to see that happen. I also have some Gara that's coming back in between. They're sprouting out. I cut them back completely to the ground and they're coming back. So maybe this will be just a winning flower bed that'll be full of color in the spring, because it'll have a nice head start since it's already starting to sprout out now in December. This is one of the fall arrangements that I planted. You can see how beautiful these chrysanthemums are. They're so pretty. I just tend to turn this pot every couple days because of the way the sun is this time of year. It's not really straight ahead. So since it's off to the side, to the south, and it shines in this way, I make sure to rotate this so that this side of the arrangement gets some sun, and then also the other side. All right, our ficus tree is doing really well. It's losing a little bit of its leaves. I think I'm going to trim some of these scraggly branches in a couple days here, but really doing well. I have a volunteer impatient that looks like it's seen better days, full of blooms, but it does need to be trimmed back, along with a surefire pink begonia right here, which is just doing really well. It responds beautifully to a complete shear back. So I think I'm going to do that. And if I shear that back and it comes back again this year, that surefire begonia is going to be, I think it's surefire rose, it's not pink. Surefire rose begonia will be its 4th season, which that's amazing for sure. All right, and we have this really pretty hanging basket here that I took from a clearance container at Lowe's and repotted it in a hanging basket, and it's just super evergreen. I've fertilized this probably once a month with water soluble fertilizer, and all 3 of the varieties are starting to show up. This beautiful sparkling amethyst verbena is really, it's just loaded with blooms, along with the Great Punch super bells, and then super bells white that's coming through right here. So I was thinking I was going to repot this with something different, but if it continues to do what it's doing now, it's going to be really, really stunning in early spring and even probably late winter, because it's already looking beautiful. I don't know if you can come up here, Ben, and see how beautiful these blooms are and how green the foliage is, which is really neat to see. Then I have the lovey-dovey super tunia right here that I had come back earlier this season. I just put the pot here. This used to live on our table back here, but I thought I needed a little bit of color on our back steps, and it's just still loaded with blooms. Extremely green and robust. It's not damaged in any way. I don't have any budworms on that, and it's not starting to rot from inside, because sometimes they can get a little bit of mildew as they get older, and it's not doing that right now, so that's great. All right, so let's look at this one. I'm going to turn this a little bit. This super bells I talked about in my last garden video. This is the double twilight, and again, this is a very, very old arrangement. This will be its 4th season coming up in 2025. And I originally planted this with a couple of other plants that fizzled out that 1st season, but there's 2 of these in here. Neither of them have died. Sometimes here in Southern California, because our annuals will last more than 1 season, they eventually fizzle out. I'll show you an example of that, but this one for some reason hasn't done that. It just keeps hanging on. And I always like to change things up, but when it looks like this, it's really hard to change something up. I have that idea in my head that I like to add more reds and maybe a couple oranges with purples to give it a really bold, vibrant look back here. And I think if this eventually dies, I'll for sure kind of mirror that cherry red from those petunias that I'm going to plant at the back planter and put those in some of our hanging baskets. Maybe use Super Bells double red along with the really nice double blue super bells that I had planted on the wall a couple of years ago to give just, you know, that really kind of cool contrast, that vibrant contrast. But in the meantime, this is still looking like this, so I can't, in good conscience, rip that out unless I see it really struggling. So we'll see what happens with this. And our coleus, this has definitely broken off in some of the wind that we've had. It's starting to push some growth from the bottom, but this time of year we do get colder. We don't get freezing cold by any means, but the coleus, it's more tropical loving, and it's definitely slowing down and looking a little bit sickly. I'm going to show you some other coleus that I have in the yard, and they were going to have to get cleared out for sure, and we'll start over from scratch with something new, something really showy and vibrant, hopefully in the spring. I might plant petunias in here, kind of mirroring those colors in the spring. I don't know. I've also thought about planting some salvia in here. Proven Winners has a couple new varieties of white and red salvia, maybe a really pretty red salvia, because The really great thing about them, they're super hardy. They kind of grow about this height too, so it kind of would fill in this whole area, and they attract pollinators, which is really fun to see. Definitely the hummingbirds, because we have a lot of hummingbirds here, so it would be really cool to bring them in the garden and see that kind of wildlife back here. So these two urns are going to come out very soon, and I think once I get these cleared out, I might plant some of our tulips in these urns to have right here by the back door. I think that would really tie in the whole look, and having the couple of urns back here full of tulips along with the raised beds, so that we get that consistency throughout the garden. And I think that's what I'm going to do, because these are really easy to clear out. Just basically dump them into our compost pile, put some new really good soil, garden soil in here. And then once I'm done with the tulips, once they've bloomed in the spring, I can just plant my annuals in here, because the tulips really don't take up a lot of the nutrition, and they don't spend the soil like a lot of other plants do. Since these have been in here all season, the soil and everything need to go, and they definitely have seen their day. Although this begonia right here, which is the double up pink, is starting to push growth from the bottom, but I'm going to go ahead and clear it out, because there is a lot of mildew here. We've been, warm, we've been cold, we've had a lot of moisture, we've had a little mist of rain, and it's just feeding that moisture onto these leaves, and that mildew is not going away anytime soon. So I'm going to clear that out, sanitize the pots, and put some tulips in there. I think it'd be really pretty by our back door here. All right, here's our other right here. Here is our other arrangement that has the oranges and the burgundies and the really beautiful ornamental kale, which is the white variety, along with the really pretty chrysanthemum. And I just love how these are growing. The thing that I really like about this variety in comparison to traditional chrysanthemums is you get that constant bloom, which is really nice. I still have chrysanthemums in the middle here, and they are growing, but they don't seem to bloom as long and as prolific as this variety does. And so this is a win. I definitely plant this in the garden again next year, for sure. Really pretty to see those contrasting colors. And I do have just a little bit of that Nemesia that's in here, a little bit of that orange Nemesia right there. So pretty, along with all of the other colors. It's always neat to see how the plants play with each other when you plant them. All right, so remember how I was talking about how some of our annuals will fizzle out after a couple of years. If you come over here, Ben, we have this double twilight blooming here. We have also this one is getting pretty fizzled out. It's pretty old. This is a double yellow. And then on this side, we had a double yellow that just kind of died, and it is gone. So this is what happens over a long period of time in our area. As they age, this is typically what can happen. And I think the main cause of that is sometimes we get slugs that bring disease to the plants. And if they find their way into a weak plant and they start to, eat away at the leaves, they spread disease. And then quickly after that, they're gone. So, and I can't really complain, because after 2 seasons of having beautiful flowers here, it's time for something new. And our coleus, okay, so Ben, maybe you can get a close-up of this. You can see how the coleus has dropped its leaves. It's also pushed its blooms a little bit, and now we have these little tiny leaves, because it's not really a fan of how cold we get. When we get down into the 40s, they don't do well. So this whole area will be cleared, and like the area by the back door where I said I was going to plant some of the salvia, I think I'm going to plant some salvia in here to further attract some of the hummingbirds and bees, and give us a really nice showcase of color with some maybe red salvia or some white salvia with the purple that we have in the back planted, that I will have planted in the back, the purple petunias and the red cherry, black cherry petunias maybe at the bottom, to give like a really pretty pop of color over here. Clearance container clearly still doing well and blooming, but this area needs some help, and it's tired, and it's been absolutely gorgeous, and it's fulfilled its purpose, but it's going to be time to go. So I'm going to be clearing this out in a couple days, along with trimming back my roses here, and maybe for sure clearing out this hanging basket, which the Supertunia indigo is still blooming right here. Although all of the plants are still alive, it's tired, it's spent, maybe something new there in the near future will be kind of fun to do. Maybe like an orange double super bells, or something red, or maybe even white to contrast what's going on down here so it's not so cohesive. So I have a variety of color happening. I have this tower boxwood here that's just kind of hanging on to life. I mean, I don't know why, but the ones that I plant in containers are more susceptible to boxwood blight than the ones that I planted in the ground. And so the one that I had planted on the other side got blight. I had to replace it. This one got blight. I had to cut off half of the plant, but I think I'm kind of tired of seeing it struggling. So I think I'm going to start over from scratch, maybe put a different variety of boxwoods on both sides here. Maybe plant the other one in the ground somewhere that's still doing well, and then plant something that is more blight free in this area, because I really do like the structure that boxwoods give, especially on both sides of the garage here. And I love to underplant them with some color. And I haven't been able to do that in a long time because I've been dealing with this issue of perpetual blight on these things. So I think I'm going to clear it out and start over from scratch. And hopefully that'll give this whole area a new, refreshed look, hopefully in the spring. But we'll get to that after all of our annuals. Until then, I'm really excited about that. All right, the last thing I want to show you is over here. And this whole area is just looking really well. I'm not sure if it's because this area is protected from how cold it gets, even though we don't get very cold. The really beautiful sun patients are just going crazy. I just came by and I trimmed the bottom off. I trimmed the bottom off just a couple of days ago and cleaned this area up. I had some weeds growing in the cracks, so I cleared that, but it looks so beautiful with the tower boxwoods. And this blue vein Supertunia still is just magnificent this time of year. It's really, really amazing to see. It's just loaded with blooms, and the greenery and the foliage is so healthy. It's unbelievable. So that was a win, because I thought I was going to lose that plant originally, and it was just an afterthought, and it looks absolutely gorgeous. We have the chocolate drop coleus right here that has completely taken over this self-watering container that is over our lattice work here that hides our air conditioning unit. In the back here, we have this Supertunia saffron finch that is still blooming. The pink super bells is, blooming a little bit, but it's nothing compared to how productive that saffron finch has been. I think I'm going to plant something similar to that, maybe all petunias in the spring. And then we have more of the sun patience with the really nice coleus here, the chocolate drop coleus. I think for the spring, I am going to repot these. I might try the strawberry drop coleus, or something a little bit different that goes with our look back here. I might try a red verbena, or something that will trail down, that will kind of pull all this together. But I can't go completely different because I have those beautiful sun patients there that are that fuchsia pink. And so I don't want it to fight completely, but I do want to create a cohesion back here that I think will be absolutely stunning in the spring and in the summer. Now in the front yard, we just recently cleared out all of our verbena and our Supertunias because we have to prepare for the tulips that we're going to plant there that I mentioned at the beginning of the video. But then after that, I think I am going to mirror what's back here in the front by planting some reds and some oranges, maybe the cherry, the black cherry petunia. I'm going to really try to kind of tone down the amount that I spend on the yard by really trying to spread out some of the plants a little bit further, because one thing that I've noticed is a lot of these varieties are so vigorous that I kind of overplant. And so if I give them a little bit more space, maybe I can save a little bit of money by letting the plants do the work. I'll have to be patient a little bit longer and not have it so full right from the beginning, but eventually over time, as they grow in and take over, then you're not going to even notice that there's less plants, which will save me money in the end. So we'll see what happens with that. But until then, that's our plan. And I have some great things coming up in the near future. But until then, thank you guys for watching. And we're so glad that we could come out and give you a video here today and give you a glimpse of what this area looks like in December, in the winter, and kind of foreshadow what we see happening in the spring. Until next time, everybody, thank you again. Take care. Bye-bye.